Right, more live coding. This time a nice exercise about language. So the problem is called IdLang. Let's read. Every human language has patterns of letters. For example, the English pattern THR is common, so thrash, thread, thrall, throb, thrust. But it does not occur in Afrikaans at all. And in Afrikaans, the pattern EEU is common, but occurs infrequently in English, and I'm not going to read that word. By looking at large texts, we can count the number of times different patterns occur to find the overall profile of a language, and people really do this. We can use this information to identify the language in which an unknown text is written. Okay, so this profile is like a fingerprint for a language. Write a program, idlang.java, that reads such patterns for Danish, German, English, Spanish, Finnish, French, and Turkish from 7 given files. Okay, so they're going to give us files, and we have to read the patterns that occur in those languages. The program must then read an additional file, an 8th file, and identify the language that the file was written in. Okay, right. To simplify matters, we shall only look at patterns consisting of 2 letters. Okay, the letters are A to Z and the space character. Okay, so it's like alphabet of 27, yeah. Each of the pattern files contain lines that identify a pattern and its frequency. For example, the file for English contains lines such as AA 0.0004. Okay, right, so this is the pattern AA, and it occurs with this frequency in a big English text. Okay, fine, I can deal with that. Then AB, AC, AZ, A space, because space is like the 27th letter, good. Then BA, blah, 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 up to space Z, but no space, space. Okay, fine, good. Right, so this is one file for one language. Your program must read these files and store the pattern in 7 27 by 27 arrays, or perhaps one 7 by 27 by 27 three-dimensional array. Okay, let's do that. The names for these files are fixed. Download them below. Okay. We shall refer to the data for one language as a vector. Okay, right. So this is one vector. This is the English vector. In this case, we are reading 7 vectors from 7 files. Yeah, good. What is it? The program must then read another file given as a command line parameter and process it in the following way. For each line, add a phantom space at the start and end of the line. Okay, so 2 spaces both ends. Now take all the pairs of consecutive characters in the line. Yes, so take them 2 by 2 when they follow in each other, consecutive. For each pair, update a count of how often the pair occurred. Okay, so we're counting the pairs and their frequency of occurrence. At the end of the file, divide the pair counts by the number of pairs to get the total frequency, right? Okay, fine. For example, given the line en la ilustración de Lambert escribió, so that's probably Spanish. The pairs are space E, because we insert a space at the start, yeah. EN and N space, space L, L, yeah. Cool, I've got that, and so on. After processing a file, the result is a vector of 27 by 27 pair frequencies. Okay, so it's a long vector. Okay, fine. Which tells us that the pair AA occurred. Okay, right. So this is a vector like this, which is just written slightly differently, but it's both 2 vectors with 729 components. Good. It tells us how many times each pair occurred. Yeah, got that. Finally, we can match this vector against the vectors that we read from the given files. Yeah, we can match the vector, this vector, for the incoming text file against the patterns that we've read from the given files for the 7 languages. If the vector for language L is AA, AB, AC, and the vector for an input file is AA prime, AB prime, AC prime, then the score for the language is AA minus AA prime squared plus AB minus AB prime squared. Right, so the differences between corresponding components squared. And if they're very close together, this score will be very low. So they'll be close together. So we can think of this as like a distance between two vectors. And we are probably looking for the language whose vector is closest to the incoming language, to the incoming text. Start your work by downloading the following files after you have read and understood the problem statement above. Okay, there's a prototype that's outlined here, tuples.zip, the language files, and inputs.zip, the files we need to identify. Okay, excellent. So we can do this. Right, I'm going to speed this up a little. Let's see. To look at that prototype that they gave us. Here it is. Let's open this in a new tab. Okay, so this is public class IdLang proto, and I'm just going to copy all the insights and then have a look through it and see what it says. So let's paste this here. Oh, it's not formatted. We formatted it quickly, and oh, and this isn't formatted nicely. Let's just do that. Okay, right. So let's read through this. Public static final. So this is a string array called language. Oh, and it has all the language names. Okay, fine, but that's good. Okay, I know it. Okay, that's just the names for the languages. Then it has a 3-dimensional double array called patterns, and that's 7 by 27 by 27. Good. So this must be the 7 languages, the vectors for the 7 languages. Yeah. Then it has a double array 2-dimensional called pairs, which is 1 vector for the incoming text file, and then it has the scores, which is a double array of size 7 for each of the languages. Okay, fine. So I'm going to read the patterns first, then I'm going to read the input file and make its pairs, and then I'm going to calculate the scores. Cool. So this is the main. Let's see what it says. Read patterns. So that's reading the patterns into that array. Read the file, and I guess calculate the pairs and calculate the scores. And then this is a little broken, so I'll just fix it. Let me just fix it properly, less than. So it has min index, and it has a for loop that starts at 0 and goes up to 7. It says language lang, so the language, it prints its score, and if that score is less than the score for the min index, then I update min index. So min index keeps track of which language 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 has the lowest score. And then the best guess is the language that has min index. Okay, right. So I guess I have to write these 3 routines. So read patterns, that's the first one. So what are those files called? They're called, yeah, these are the files. These are their names. And let's just open one up for Danish. How do I open it? Just open. Okay, right, so the letters and frequencies. Good. Since I'm going to be doing something over and over, I guess I could store these names in an array as well, but I think I'll just write a subroutine. That I'll say read pattern, and in the 0th language you read from this file. Right, I'm going to write read pattern, which will read one pattern for one language, and I think this should work. Look, I could have done this in a for loop as well, because this first parameter is just incrementing, but then I need to somehow have these file names somewhere. I don't want to do that. I want to do it like this. French and Turkish, I guess. Okay, right, so let's write routine read pattern. Public static void read pattern, and this is the language and this is the file name. Right, and I'm going to use in, import it, let's import it, in, yeah. In, I'm going to scroll up a little bit, is new in, and I put it in directory folder data, so I guess I should put here data slash and the file name. And now I'm going to have to write a loop that reads the data from this file one line at a time. So it's going to be a string and a double. And I'm going to put this in a loop, but I know exactly how many entries there are. I think they're all here. It doesn't skip any, does it? Even if it occurs 0 times, it's still it's in this list. Right. So I'm going to say for I have to be careful about this. But yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna say letter 1 goes from 0, and while it's less than 27, make it one more. And the same for letter 2. Oops, there should be a 1. There should be a 2, 2, 2. Right. I'm going to read a string. That's the string that is at the start of each line, but then I'm going to ignore it. I'm not going to store this string that I've read in a variable at all. I'm just going to throw it away. And then next I'm going to read a double, but I'm going to put it here in patterns, which is 7 by 27 by 27. So that is 7 is the language, which we passed as a parameter. So that will be lang, letter 1, letter 2. So the pattern letter 1, letter 2 occurs read double from the file. That's the frequency for this letter. Okay, and I think that's it. This should be reading the files one by one, and then for each one it does this story. I think that's fine. Now it says read the file, some file, and count how many times each pair occurs. Then normalize by the total number of pairs. So I must remember the total number of pairs, and I must remember to normalize at the end. And this should all be put in the pairs array. Okay, fine. So let's do that. I'm going to open the file name. New in file name. And this time I'm not going to add data / at the front. I expect the user to give me that correct file name. And now I'm going to loop again over that. Let's just see what those files are like. Let's see a Danish. I don't know what they're like. Okay, so this is Danish, and I'm reading these lines one by one. And for each, I'm adding the space in front and the space in the end, and then I count all the pairs in that line. Good. So while I've got to keep track of the pairs, pair count is 0. While in has a next line. I want to read the whole line. So line equals in dot read line. And just here I'm going to add the space right at the end and at the start. So line is space plus read the whole line from the file plus another space. Okay, and I'm going to walk across this line. I starts at 0 while it's less than line dot length -1. Because if there are 10 characters, there are only 9 pairs. 0 and 1, 1 and 2, 2 and 3. Well, you get the drift. Okay, so the first letter, I guess I'd better store this in a char, is line.char at index I, and the next letter is at I plus 1. So I'm looking at position I, and I'm looking at the letters at index I and I plus 1, and I've got to just update their frequency. Add 1 to that. Okay, and right at the end, oh, and I've got to add 1 to the pair count, because right at the end I've got to divide by the pair count, so it better not be 0. And I'm just going to divide all the letters in pairs. So I'm just going to copy the while loop from up here, copy it, bring it down here. Oh, one too many. There we go. And I'm going to say pairs, letter 1, letter 2, divide that by pair count. And I think, if I remember correctly, pairs is already a double. So what I'm doing here is dividing a double by an int, so it shouldn't give me any issues with rounding down. Division will work fine. My only concern is that letter will be like a big capital A. It will be the character A. And when I convert that to an int, let me write it like this. When I convert that to an int, I get the ASCII code for A, which is 65. So when I use it as an index in pairs array, I'm really converting it, using it as an integer. So this is really saying position 65, but pairs only has 27 rows. So I've got to convert big A to 0 and big B to 1 and so on, and the space needs to be whatever the space needs to be. But I think when I copied it, I saw at the end that there is, convert the character CH to the corresponding index. So A is 0, B is 1, C is 2, Z is 25, and space becomes 26. I saw this routine when I was downloading it. Okay, right. So I can just call it index and I give it a character. So I'm going to change this to int, and I'm going to say the index of this character. and that'll convert it to an int starting at 0. I would have seen this mistake immediately because it would have given me an array index out of bounds exception if I tried to use letter just like that. Okay, fine. So let's just recap. I'm supposed to read the vector for a file. I open the file, make pair count 0, while there is a next line, read it and add the spaces. Then you walk across the string, get the letter, get its successor, increment that pair, and increment pair count. And at the end, I've read all the lines of the file, and then I normalize it by dividing all the entries in pairs by pair count. Okay, now here it says update the count for each language given the pair. Where is this used? Is it used anywhere? It's not used here. Okay, was I supposed to write it? I don't need it. I'll just delete that. Why not? Okay. Now I've got to calculate the scores. So once again, I can write a separate routine that calculates the score for each language. But the last time I did that because I was too lazy to put all these file names into an array. So this time it's not going to be that difficult. I'm going to say for lang 0 and lang goes up to 7. And now I've got to calculate that score. Let's just get that formula again. Yeah, just go over all 27 by 27, subtract the corresponding ones from the language I know to the unknown language, and square it, and add it all together. Okay, fine, got that. And I store that score for language lang in this array at the top that's got the scores for each of the languages. Okay, let's do that. So for each of those languages, I'm going to say its scores lang equals 0, even though I think it's not really needed. Then I'm going to walk across all 27 by 27 letters. I can just copy this again. And let's add the closing braces there and there. And for this letter pair, I'm going to subtract double diff the patterns for language lang, letter 1, letter 2, and the pairs that I've just calculated. See, this is too long. I don't like it when it scrolls like this. So maybe I'll make this shorter. Maybe I'll just call it A. Not a great name, but it's not the worst name either. It'll be B. Okay, that's the difference between the error from the one vector to the other, and I add the square of this to the scores for this language. Add diff times diff. If it's just square, you can just do this. There's no need to math.pow or anything like that. Okay. Let's just double check. I do it for each of the 7 languages. I start by making it score 0. Then I walk across all the pairs and I calculate the difference between the pattern for this language, AB, and pairs, AB, which is the vector for the new input file. And then I add the square of that difference to the scores for this language. Okay, fine, let's see how this works. Now I'm going to run it once. It's going to crash. It's already crashed. Why is it crashing? No such element. Okay, never mind. I don't even think I ran it. I don't know why it happened. Let's run it and see it crash. Oh, it's complaining in the same place. So where exactly is it complaining? In.readString. This is a good chance for us to do a little debugging. So it's complaining. And where was it called? Oh, let's open the console. It was called here. I was just calling read patterns. And then it went here, 0 and the language. Tuples minus DA. Okay, that's correct. File name is correct. Then it didn't like read string. Oh, that was a mistake. Oh, close that. It didn't like it when I called read string. Okay, well, I'll tell you what we do. Well, let's read S. And just for now, we display S as we read it. S is S. And see how far we get. Maybe this happens at the end of the file. Maybe this happens, I may as well display the letters. Can't I? Mightn't I? Letter 1 is equal to letter 1, and letter 2 is equal to 2. It's just a little debugging code. Save, run. So it's counting correctly. Is it though? No, look, it's not. This can't be right. I mean, Z, which is the first letter of S, is not 22. We know that Z is 25. So somewhere it got off track. I made an assumption that these pairs were all sorted correctly and that they were all there. But I mean, just the next line, you can see that's a big mistake. Is it? I wonder. I think, just for safety, I wonder whether, can I go right back to the start? Yeah, here we go. This is the start. AA is 0, 0. A space is 026. That's correct. B space should be 126, but it's 24. Why is this? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R. There's no X, so there's no BX. And also there's no Q. Okay, right. So I can't assume that all the letters are present in this file. I made a big mistake. So what I really have to do is read the characters one by one. Right. Okay, we'll do the same trick as we did before. I'll do this trick. I'll put it here. Except in this case, well, oh, I need to change all of this. Well, let's see. This is a good lesson in has next line. Okay, so there is a next line. So what I'll do is I will read the first two characters on each line. And those will be my letter 1 and letter 2. But there's no, I should use in.readChar. And read the next character in.readchar, and then I will read the frequency and put it in the spot in the array. Okay, right. And I'll tell you what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the fact that the file may start AA 0.0004 and then have AB 0.0123, doesn't matter. I'm concerned now that I'll start here, read the A and the A into letter 1 and 1, and that'll give me 0. Then I read a double, and it'll consume all these characters. But I'm really afraid that the end of line may still be left over, so when I go back to read the character, I'm actually reading this end of line. And that'll cause issues. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, for safety, display the letters. And I expect them to go 00, 01, 02. I will display the letters. Letter 1 is letter 1. If this works, it's going to be nice. I like all language stuff. Okay, delete that. Save, run. See, I think this happened because there was still a little left over. So the way to fix that, I think, is to just have an extra read line, which reads the whole of the rest of the line. So once again, what will happen now is that, and here is the end of line, which is really a character. So this in.readchar will read the A. This in.readchar will read up to this A. In.readDouble will read up to that point, and the in.readLine will read the whole of the rest of the line, so that when this loop repeats, the next thing I read is this A. Let's just keep this here, save, run again. Ah, good. This is exactly what I wanted to see. Now it's complaining about args. I didn't supply a file name, so let's do that. And the file name I want to supply is this wiki minus Danish minus 01. Okay, let's see if that works. Run configurations. String prompt. Apply and run, and data / wiki minus Danish minus 01.txt, and let's see what happens. Oh, look at this. So we've got to take out all this debugging stuff. Let's quickly do that. I don't need the debugging anymore. Not here. There we go. Delete that line. But then it gives the scores for the 7 languages, and it decided that this is probably Danish. Let's just try one more language. Let's try Finnish, which I happen to know well. This is an article about snakes, Garmet. Okay, right. Doesn't matter what it's about. I wanted to identify this Finnish. So this is Phi04. So I'm going to run IdLang again. This time I wanted to check Phi4, and it gets it correctly. This is excellent. Wow, this was a long exercise, and I made a couple of mistakes, but I think I fixed them, and it turned out well. I like this little program. Okay, bye for